Thank you. Okay. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through the whole PowerPoint presentation because the keynote speech this morning and a number of good presentations have already covered several of the points which are in the proceedings. So you can read my PowerPoint and follow it all that way. But I'm still going to keep with the overall organization. The first part of my talk is going to be a little more extemporaneous, and I may depart from the script, but I hope it will be more interesting. I want to first talk about where the Park Geun-hye government administration's creative economy came from, and its meaning in Korea, because some of you international visitors especially may not know, and the Koreans may find it interesting to hear my perspective on that as an American living here. Second part of the presentation, I'll talk briefly about a subject that's been touched upon by Malcolm, Raymond, and others, and that is the relationship of physical urban clusters, the geography, the physical geography, to the new geography of cyberspace, which is the emerging realm in which we're all spending a lot more time these days. And finally, I want to talk a bit about the challenge posed by silos versus open innovation, especially in Korea and in the Asian context, the role of culture and language in the internet era. Dr. Oh and I, in our 2011 book, Digital Development in Korea, conceptualized this growth curve, which is familiar to some of you. This goes through the latest available World Bank data, gross national income per capita, from 1980 through 2012. We conceptualized it in terms of 4 waves of innovation. Started in 1980, literally, and what the Koreans call the Palshinyeondae Jongbotongshin Hyokbyung, the 1980s telecommunications revolution. It truly was a revolutionary decade. And then there was the mobile revolution and the broadband revolution, and most recently the ubiquitous networking policy push here in Korea. And all along the way, there were key technologies developed. In 1980, this country had about 2.6 or 2.8 million telephone lines to serve a population of 36 million people. This was a huge social and political, as well as an economic crisis. The telephone backlog, as it was called. There was no color television broadcasting. Despite progress in the 1970s, the semiconductor industry in Korea had not become competitive internationally with Japan and the U.S. So there was the first big technology project was TDX. Second, there was another one on the 4 megabyte DRAM memory chip project, which helped Samsung and the other Chaehol groups get competitive internationally. Then, in 1993, this country decided to adopt CDMA as a mobile standard. That was a really bold decision because in 1993, Qualcomm was a small company, relatively unknown. Wibro, mobile WiMAX, was invented in Korea, and the start of, in 2005, the start of digital multimedia broadcasting. This was a remarkable experience, and all along the way from 1980 to now, Korea has a presidential system where the president serves 5 years. So you can assume every 5 years with a new president there's going to be a restructuring of government to some extent or another. There were several major restructuring. The first part of my presentation here, I want to focus on this question of why did Park Geun-hye come up with this creative economy push? Well, what happened is that in 2008, the government restructuring was under Lee Myung-bak, who had a background with the Hyundai Corporation. He eliminated the Ministry of Science and Technology, eliminated the powerful Ministry of Information and Communication, and created a new knowledge economy ministry, which was more industry friendly. But his election in 2008 also signaled the beginning of a public debate involving policy circles, people from industry, people from government, the press. Everybody got involved. I've reviewed the press with Korean colleagues on this, and the issues were, everybody felt there was a need for a control tower, for a leading government agency. This is a question that's come up in our discussions here. So that issue became a big issue in the 2012 presidential election, which, as we know, Park Geun-hye won. One of the candidates in the election, An Chol-soo, had been a software entrepreneur, very successful, and a Seoul National and KAIST professor. And he had proposed a future planning entity. So what happened, I'm going to skip through this here. Well, let me just say here, I'll come back to the story in a moment. These two slides are from a Brown University study done that shows that you can use light measured from space as a proxy measure for economic development. Slide on the left is 1992, and you see the growth of the national capital area, or Sudokwon. The Sudokwon in Korea is home to half of the population of South Korea. And the green area there is a Sudokwon, and then I made some additions with Daejeon City in the dark blue and Daejeon down. And the KTX high-speed train runs right up this center of population concentration. So I can hop on the train and ride for an hour and be right in the middle of Seoul. So I covered that. Okay. Now, and I'm going to skip over Wilson's and skip over this. But I want to touch on the topic of what is innovation versus creativity. How do they relate? My dissertation advisor at Stanford was Everett M. Rogers, who is famous for his books on diffusion of innovations. And I looked up Ev's definition, which is, quote, an idea, practice, or object that is perceived as new by an individual or other unit of adoption. What this means is there could be something going on in Africa or in an Asian culture somewhere that's thousands of years old that could be introduced in North America and be an innovation. So the creative industries, this is an UNCTAD definition, but I want to get to, so President Park Geun-hye was elected after this long 5-year national public debate about things, and she said in her inaugural address, across the world we are witnessing an economic paradigm shift. A creative economy is defined by the convergence of science and technology with industry, the fusion of culture with industry, and the blossoming of creativity in the very borders that were once permeated by barriers. This is a very broad view, broader than just the traditional cultural enterprises that we heard about earlier. It cuts across all economic sectors, industry sectors, and covers the whole economy. And this, of course, her new super ministry, the Mirebu, was opposed, and it became a matter of debate. But Park Geun-hye, in her inaugural address, said the very heart of a creative economy lies, at the very heart lies science, technology, and the IT industry, areas I have earmarked as key priorities. And she stuck to it and named the new ministry the Mire Changcho Kwahak Bu, okay, which means future creation. And for a few weeks, the press had a heyday with this. There were even press articles in the English press that thought she meant by creationism, like the Bible versus, is it scientific versus other views of creation. But finally, they announced the official English name, which is Ministry of Science, ICT, and Future Planning, which is a bit long. It's really, I think, a Ministry of Science and Innovation. No, so let me quickly go. I've got 5 minutes, I think. Yeah. Just quickly touch. This is a topic that's been discussed in earlier presentations, but as a communication scholar, when I was given this assignment, I thought, what's the most important question? And I have been studying the information revolution through the Korean experience since about 1991. And I'll tell you, this is the best country in the world to live in if you like fast networks. If you like blazing fast internet. It's faster than Japan, just for the record. Akamai has been measuring this since 2008. Some people, I get this question often. They go, well, Japan must have faster networks. No, they're fast here. Well, so I thought, we know that not only in Korea, but around the world, people are spending more time on the internet, searching, on playing games, doing various things in what we've come to call cyberspace. And they're spending less time watching the old-fashioned television or reading newspapers and doing these other things. This is measurable, and it's happening in Korea. It's happening in each one of the countries to some extent, probably. So I'm going to skip over the fiber. I'm going to skip. That was the FCC chairman. I skipped right over him. But he made a statement in a 2012 speech about basically saying that we need giga internet. They figured that out now in the United States. We need giga internet in order to remove the constraints of location and speed from innovation. He said that, and the previous speaker just mentioned that, which is something I agree with. I think innovation is becoming borderless. Yes, it can occur in innovation clusters, but there's something going on with the growth of the internet and cyberspace. The thing about the internet, it's instantly global in scope. And to make this a little personal, just in the 2 years I've been at KAIST, I have met, well, let me broaden that. A few years earlier, I was with the Fulbright Commission. I've met people through my blog over the internet from Finland. I met a doctoral student from Cambridge University. I met them all through a cyber connection initially, not through living together in an innovation cluster. And they actually came and visited here. So, a recent Gartner study, though, pointed out that, and I make a point in the written presentation, you can read it, that cities and innovation clusters can still have silos. And I remember a long time resident of Korea talking to me about this. And this slide I'm skipping over, you see it refers to gamification. Some of the earlier speakers have talked about what can the internet, the World Wide Web, and the tools provided by these new digital networks, how can they feed into the creative process? Well, I think games, which is one area that Korea is strong, because the internet here came earlier, broadband, I'm talking broadband internet via cable, DSL, and then fiber, was built more quickly in Korea. So back in 1998, you had PC bombs springing up all over because ThruNet was offering broadband internet. And this is now a big field, and it's one where Korea, I think, could really do some interesting things. So, to conclude, and I'll be right on time, this closing section, I was inspired to write that after meeting with a couple of Asian studies scholars that put me to shame. Both of these individuals, one teaches at Kyunghee University here, another one is a Georgetown professor. They both spoke Chinese, Japanese, and Korean quite well, better than me, and I thought, the Georgetown professor in particular, we had an interesting lunch conversation about whether open innovation works in the Asian context. Let me close with an illustration, personal illustration. When I was teaching as a senior Fulbright scholar at Yonsei, 1985-86, I got to know the older Horace Underwood, the father of Horace H. Underwood. The Underwood family are Presbyterian missionaries who founded Yonsei University. And Horace G. Underwood told me, after I had finished my Fulbright year, I was in touch with him. I was trying to get a project going that involved several departments at Yonsei. And he wrote to me and said, Jim, just remember one thing. In Korea, there is very little history, culturally speaking, of lateral cooperation. So my point is, it's not only in Korea, I think, and maybe it's not only in Asia, I also think it's generational. But silos can exist right here in the Daejeon, even though we're here in Korea. So thank you. I went over by a minute, and I apologize.